From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone. I'm Jaime Hixson.
And I'm Eric Rosen.
We're very happy that you could join us this evening. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about, so we're going to go right into it. But first, we're going to let you know you can still see old episodes of past shows on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. And you can also contact us on Instagram and Snapchat.
That's right. And we got plenty of things to get into. Again, we just want to give our prayers and thoughts to, of course, the legendary 16-time wrestling champion Ric Flair, who's been going through some health issues, including his heart this past week.
Yeah.
He was rushed to the hospital, actually, last Monday, and, And it's really sad that this took place. You know, as a fan, of course, of one of the most legendary wrestlers in the world, who not only had this in-ring skill, but also had the personality to back it up. To see him go through one of the most vulnerable moments of his life, you know, health-wise, you know, it's just it's saddening to me. And I hope that he'll recover, he'll be fine. And I'm not just thinking about him, but I'm thinking about his daughter Charlotte and the entire Flair family, what they're feeling right now at this point. You know, because I could just imagine with the publicity on top of this.
Yeah.
You know, just emotionally and spiritually, this has got to be really.
This is a tough time for Ric's family, and just to give you an idea, Ric actually has. Well, let me put it this way: Ric is going to be the subject of a 30 for 30 special on ESPN this fall.
Rightfully so. I think, you know, he is one of the most interesting characters. Again, he was like a modern day Gorgeous George, you know, with a bit of Hulk Hogan infused, you know.
Funny you mention that, because Hulk Hogan is one of the guys who's being interviewed for this 30 for 30 special. It's him, it's Triple H, Mr. McMahon, Flair himself, of course, and they're going to focus on his entire life and career.
Which, you know, is one of the most... one of my favorite moments, Ric Flair, the 1992, and I think we got a bit of a...
Yeah, unfortunately, here we go. Unfortunately, there was a bit of a technical issue right there. Sorry about that, folks. By the way, Kenny Graham's on the other side of the glass, but he actually has to leave in a little bit because he's going to be helping out right next door with a show that's taking place currently.
Yes, God's Way. That's taking place. That's on channel 36 on Verizon. So if you ever get a chance, watch it. 1992, the Royal Rumble. It was the only Royal Rumble in history where the winner would actually become the World Heavyweight Champion that night. There's never been another Royal Rumble like that.
Yeah.
And he defeated, of course, at the end of the match, I believe it was Hulk Hogan at the end, to win that championship. In fact, Roddy Piper won the Intercontinental title that very night, and he was in the Royal Rumble match. He could have actually had two titles in one night had he won, but it was Ric Flair who ultimately won, and yes, there were times where he did cheat a little bit in the match. He is the dirtiest player in the game for a reason.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I loved about Ric, was he was unapologetic about who he was, and he did it with style. And with no pun intended, Flair.
Yeah. Turns out Ric Flair is his real name after all. Although the last name Flair is spelled Flehr.
Wow. That I did not know, because I always thought it was Flair, but that's how they spell it in the ring and all that, his character name. His daughter Charlotte is sort of a mirror image of Ric. A lot of the same mannerisms, styles, especially the they're flamboyant, you know, amazing colors, but I wouldn't say flamboyant, but they're definitely, you know, a lot of feathers too, just bright, beautiful colors. But on top of it, she has great physical gifts for herself. She can do a lot of yoga-esque style moves in the ring. Like, for instance, her finishing move is sort of a variation of her father's, the figure eight. Instead, after she does the figure eight, she does this bridge-style yoga move where the pain is harder than it already is. You know, imagine just getting in a regular figure eight, but then you have somebody adding a bridge to it.
Yep.
That hyperextends your leg to the point where if you're in the center of the ring, you better tap out. Otherwise, you're going to be on crutches
She's always been a terrific athlete. Long before she went into wrestling, she was a volleyball player.
Yep.
In fact, she played volleyball, I think, for Florida State and then for North Carolina State in her younger days. And then she went into physical fitness for a little bit. I think she ran her own gym for a time before she went into the family business, if you will.
She actually married a wrestler. Wasn't WWE, but she actually was for a while married to a fellow wrestler because, you know, a lot of people in the business end up dating or marrying each other.
Yeah.
But then recently she divorced this individual, and they had an amenable divorce.
Yeah.
Because she was just getting into her career was just blossoming at that point. So I think, you know, and things were just not going well between these two people. And right now she is still, she's one of the top wrestlers in the company. She's not the champion at the moment, but you know what? She'll probably win the SmackDown title at some point again. There's no way they're going to not have her with that belt.
It's just a matter of time before she wins a title for the umpteenth time.
But going back to her dad, one of the saddest moments of watching, besides what's going on with Ric Flair health-wise, one of the saddest moments was 2008 at WrestleMania, his last match, Orlando, against Shawn Michaels. The moment when Shawn was about to super kick Ric Flair in the face, and Shawn Michaels mouthed these very words, "I love you, I'm sorry, I love you," and he super kicked him and pinned him. That was one of the most heartbreaking moments as a wrestling fan to watch.
Well, in the ring, that was definitely heartbreaking, but outside of the ring, he has gone through
The Ringer.
a lot of turmoil in his life. You know, he's a father of 4 children, but unfortunately, one of his kids, I think it was Reed Flair,
Died in a horrific car accident.
wound up passing away.
So it's been really like, it's been one crazy journey for that entire family.
And for the record, Reed Flair actually died of a drug overdose.
Yeah, that's right. It wasn't a car accident. I'm thinking sorry.
And true to WWE's slimy reputation, they decided to use Reed's death in a storyline involving Charlotte.
Yeah, I remember that. I think it was like a year ago. One of the wrestlers who was going up against Charlotte decided to. I think it was AJ Lee. I think it was either her or someone who brought that up, and it is pretty slimy at times that WWE does exploit real life issues for entertainment in the ring. If you look at with the Bella twins, they've done that to them, or especially recently with Nick, because for many years, you know, Nikki and John Cena were never together in the ring.
Yeah.
And then, you know, they tried to use that relationship along with the Miz and Maurice recently at this past WrestleMania, which led to the proposal that was long awaited. That was minimal compared to what happened with Charlotte, though. That was slimy beyond belief.
Yeah.
It was disgusting to even bring that up. You know, that would be like WWE using Chris Benoit. If they ever brought that story, that would be egregious if they ever did something like that. You know, or they talked about like when I'm thinking about Ric Flair, it's really difficult. But you know what? We got a lot of subjects to talk about. We can't talk all Ric Flair the entire show, but believe me, our hearts, our thoughts, our prayers, everything that you and I have are with Ric Flair for a speedy recovery and his family through this difficult time. Yeah. Now, let's get into the Subway Series, which, of course, you know, this is the 21st year that they are having this since interleague play was introduced in 1997 under now Hall of Fame inductee Bud Selig, the commissioner at the time. Since they've done that, previously, before the series, there were only 2 sweeps. 2003, when the Yankees swept all 6 games, and 4 years ago in 2013, when the Mets swept all 4 games. Now, the 3rd sweep occurred this past week, where the New York Yankees took care of business. On Monday, the Mets were up 2-0 with home runs by Curtis Granderson and Yoenis Cespedes. What happens, of course, Aaron Hicks hits his 40th and his 435th Major League game. Judge reached his 140th as well as Sanchez, 139th. And Sanchez had a 273-foot sacrifice fly in the 4th inning.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. They win 4-2. The Mets had a 2-0 lead, and they gave up 4 consecutive runs.
Well, that's what happens, one, when you're near the bottom of the totem pole in the National League East, and two, when you're going up against an inner-city rival who, quite frankly, is just head and shoulders better than the Mets right now. And this game was really interesting in the fact that it was actually a pitcher's duel for quite a while, and then the Yankees wound up making their spurt in the late innings and wound up coming away with a victory.
And the bullpen really did. Chad Green had 2 2/3 scoreless innings. Robertson had 3 in a hitless 8th inning. Dylan Betances got his 7th save of the year in that performance. Then came Tuesday. Sonny Gray, in his first 2 appearances since being acquired from the Oakland Athletics, could not get a victory. And you know what? Those games were not entirely his fault. He had bad fielding around him in his first game, and some hitting that didn't come to fruition. This time around, the Mets did win 5-4 in this game with Jacob deGrom. Gray, what was crazy, Dominic Smith had his first major league home run in this game.
Yeah, and Ahmed Rosario also had a home run in that game to account for the Mets scoring.
Yeah, they were down 5-2 in the 9th, and Aroldis Chapman, in the fashion we've unfortunately seen him in this year, gave up a 2-run homer to Ahmed Rosario, and he nearly blew yet another save. But yet he got the save in the end, especially at the end. He hurt his ankle, in fact. If you saw at the end when he made that...
It was actually his hamstring.
His
wound up
hamstring?
hurting his hamstring, and that's why you saw him crouched down on the mound, and he looked really, really
in pain,
frustrated, and he was also perspiring really badly, too.
Well, after giving a 2-run homer like that to Rosario, I don't blame the guy for perspiring. I would be pretty nervous, too, after the amount of blown saves he's had this year, which haven't helped the Yankees at all, and they brought him back for a specific reason.
Yeah.
Not to blow saves. That is just mind-boggling.
I think there might be something more to just his hamstring than he's letting on. I think there might be some kind of multiple physical problems that he's going through right now that he does not want to talk about.
And then, so the first 2 games were, of course, you had to take the 4 train to Yankee Stadium. Then Wednesday came the 7th train, the 7-line subway to Citi Field, and Judge hits this insane 457-foot homer to left field. This is one of the biggest home runs Citi Field has seen since the opening year in 2009.
That went to the 3rd deck. The 4th row of the 3rd deck in left field. They said it was 450 plus. I'm thinking it's closer to maybe 500 feet because that was a titanic blast.
That reminded me of like Tommy Agee, at the old Shea Stadium. Remember? All the way into that part of the left field.
Exactly right.
But of course, Judge, somebody was telling me he swings. It's like DiMaggio-esque.
Yeah.
The way he hits the ball.
When he's on his game, he's got the sweetest right-handed stroke. And the best part about it was, as soon as he hit that blast, he just started dashing for the bases. He did not even bother to admire his home run. He just kept his head down and went straight around the bases.
And Didi Gregorius had a tie-breaking 2-run double in the 7th.
And as it turns out, that was the inning where there was a strike call against him. Let's see, I think Paul Sewald was the pitcher who was on the mound facing Gregorius. Paul Sewald threw a fastball that grazed the inside part of the plate. That was supposed to be strike 3. And the umpire, a very young umpire in that game, gave Didi Gregorius the call. And then what happens on the next pitch? Gregorius hits that 2-run double.
And how about the consecutive walks he gave up in that 7th, too, to Ronald Torreyes? The Ronald Torreyes leadoff double and the consecutive walks, it really did not help whatsoever. And then, Cespedes and d'Arnaud each had sacrifice flies for the Mets, but at the end of the day, they lost 5-3. That's the 3rd straight game. Then comes the last chance the Mets have to try and win the series. And, of course, they give up the first 7 runs. They're down 7-1. Curtis Granderson hits a grand slam homer in the bottom of the 9th to bring the Mets within 2 runs. And unfortunately, they just could not get any more runs to try and will themselves to a victory. They lost 7-5. Gary Sanchez had matched a career high with 5 RBIs
Yeah.
and had a first inning 3-run homer.
It could be that he's peaking at the right time because he's been really smoking the ball recently. But lost in this whole thing is the way Luis Severino pitched. He is looking so much like that ace that the Yankees have been looking for probably since the Jeter years, 96, 98, 99, and 2000. He's been somebody that the Yankees have failed to develop in their farm system for about 15 years. And now the Yankees find this guy, and the scary part about it is he's only 23.
He had before this game, he had one of his worst outings where he gave up 10 runs, 8 hits. 8 of those runs were earned in his last his last previous start.
That was
before
the
this
game.
game.
Yeah, that was the game where the Yankees wound up committing 3 errors in that one. And quite frankly, Severino deserved so much better there. But the defense just betrayed him. But
And
this time,
Benintendi had those 2 3-run homers. That was when they lost to the Red Sox 10-5. But this time, and before that outing, he had a stretch where he went 4-0 with a 1.36 ERA in a span of 6 games before that start. So he's done well in, I would say, 7 of his last 8 starts.
Yep.
He's really been sensational for the Yankees.
and now he's a 10-game winner. And the
They won-
reason why he's a 10-game winner is because he's pitching with more confidence, he's pitching with more command, and he's not afraid to challenge the hitters.
So if, with the Yankees, playing Boston and all that, it's, for the next few weeks, these series that are coming up are going to determine who wins the division or gets that number 1 wild card seat. Because I
Yeah.
think Boston and New York, they're both going to be in the playoffs. It just depends on where they're going to end up.
Keep in mind, there's another 5 or 6 weeks of the season left over. So there's plenty of time to determine playoff positioning for at least 4 spots in the American League. We already know that Houston is going to take
The West.
the American League West.
That's
There's
done.
no challenge being made by either of the other 4 teams in that division.
Seattle, it used to be like 19 games, but Seattle has and LA have lessened the amount of games, but they're still in double-digit hell. So there's no way that the Astros lose that division. However, the Angels and the Mariners are making headway in the
Yeah.
American League wildcard race right now. This was a team that was far back in the pack. Now the Angels are in that second spot at the moment, but it's only by, I think, a half game, maybe a game at best. And then you look at some of the other teams, like the Twins are fighting for that second spot. You see the Mariners are fighting for that second spot.
Yep.
Then you look at the American League Central, and Cleveland is going to win that division yet again. The American League East is going to go down to the Yankees and Red Sox. As for the National League, the Nationals pretty much own the East Division. The Dodgers are going to take the West. The Central right now, the Cubs and the Brewers, I think, are going to be in a fight for that coveted division spot. And then you look at the National League wild card. There's a virtual tie with the Rockies and the Diamondbacks. For that number 1 and 2 spot.
Exactly right.
They both have identical 67-win records going into that race. So it's going to be a very tight race for both wild cards. As always, the wild cards are always tight up until the final day of the season, which is October 3rd. And when October 3rd comes, that Sunday, we're going to find out what takes place. If I had to pick, I honestly think the Diamondbacks are going to end up with the number 1 slot. The Rockies are going to end up at number 2. Or, because the next closest team is 5 games.
Yeah.
It's
It's not impossible to make up 5 games in 6 weeks. I mean, it's been done before. Of course, Met fans will hate hearing this, but blowing a 7.5 game lead with 17 games to play 10 years ago.
Oh, thanks for that reminder.
Hard to imagine that was 10 years ago when the Phillies made that comeback. Where did the time go?
Thank you again for that memory lane. No, I'm sorry. I know.
Well, keep in mind, there have been bigger comebacks made than this before.
How about the Padres? Remember 2007?
The Padres blew that lead against over the Brewers, and the Brewers wound up taking that wild card. You can even go further back than that. 1951, the famous comeback made by the Giants, who trailed by 12 games to the Dodgers for the National League lead. And what happens? The Dodgers go into a little bit of a tailspin, and the Giants win 37 of their last 44 games and force that 3-game playoff for the pennant.
My favorite still the Rockies run in 2007. Actually, when they
20 out of 21, yeah.
they made it all the way to the World Series against the Boston Red Sox. The Red Sox 3 years ago won the first World Series since 1918 when they beat the Yankees. They beat the Yankees in the American League to get to the World Series against the St. Louis Cardinals. But the fact that they were in their second World Series in 3 years, and they beat the Colorado Rockies. It was a very tough series, especially it was Todd Helton, one of Todd Helton's his only chance at that time to win a World Series ring with the club he's been with since he's been with that team.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, we've had some memorable comebacks. We've had some memorable World Series championships.
Yeah.
I still, among them. And I know this is a sore spot for Yankee fans, but still the 2001 series against the Arizona Diamondbacks, what happened with our country, this was that World Series that not just the Yankees, but America needed to see.
That was probably the only time in his entire term or 2 terms as president where George W. Bush was actually looked at in a favorable light.
It wasn't even just. It was just the unifying. It was that World Series right there that really helped New York along with the game that took place in the Mets against the Braves 3 weeks after 9/11 when Piazza and the Mets took on the Braves and he hit that game-winning home run in Shea Stadium. That was and just the camaraderie these two teams had with each other. That's what I loved right there. Because these teams have always been at each other's throats, but it was one baseball game. It was one nation. It was that type of vibe that took place that was awe-inspiring to watch. So this is why I love baseball. People at times say that baseball is a boring sport.
It's not a boring sport. The problem is that there are so many things that lengthen the game that it causes people to make ridiculous comments such as the sport is boring. They're not taking into account some of the beauty that goes into the game, like a Titanic Aaron Judge type of blast, or running the bases and trying to get a steal, or playing ABCD ball, or going with a hit and run.
Or not only that, how about those where when you're down like by 7-8 runs, let's say, and seeing a team trying to make an epic comeback. Things I remember years ago. Remember when the Rangers were kicking the crap out of the Yankees by 14 runs?
Yep.
And they made that epic comeback. Mm-hmm. Moments like that is what captivates baseball for me, and are the antithesis of boring.
Yeah.
Speaking of baseball, locally here, because I know what a segue I just did that, but the Staten Island Yankees should be capturing the hearts
of every Staten Islander.
They have now won at around 11 straight games ever since they were swept by the week when they were swept by the Aberdeen Ironbirds, and then lost the first game against, I believe it was Lowell. They've been on an 11-game tear, including having a doubleheader victory on Wednesday against Connecticut, 5-1 the first game, with Jonathan Lozaga giving up only 1 hit over 5 scoreless innings, and Timmy Robinson, Jose Polonia with 3 hits and 4 RBIs in the first game. Then Gio Roscoe with a 5-inning, 1-hit scoreless start in the second game. And they actually won game 2, 3-0. They played Connecticut, and they defeat them 4-0 at that point.
Right.
It's just unbelievable what they have done, the Staten Island Yankees. This could be the year they win their first New York Penn League championship since 2006, and the manager of this year's club was on that 06 team as the hitting coach, Julio Mosquera, who was in the Gulf Coast League the last 2 years as the manager.
Yep.
And they only had 1 representative at the All-Star game.
Which is pretty interesting considering the year that they've had.
The best record in the New York Penn League, and they can only get 1 player from the SI Yanks to be in the Penn.
Well, it just goes to show you that there has not really been one guy who has really carried the team, so to speak. This has been a collective effort of guys.
Yeah, and by the way, the South defeated the North team 5-2 this past Tuesday. That was in Troy, New York. Of course, home to the Tri-City Valley Cats. Now into soccer. One of the best soccer rivalries El Clásico. Real Madrid against FC Barcelona. When you think about it, they're two two mega stars. Cristiano Ronaldo for Real Madrid,
Right.
and the Golden Boot, Lionel Messi for FC Barcelona. And in this is for the Spanish Cup.
Yeah.
And of course, Real Madrid won 2-0 in this match by goals by Marco Asensio, who unbelievable, a curling shot that hit the crossbar. And Benzema, Karim Benzema, who's a crazy good player.
Yep.
Had a flat-footed Real defender, Samuel, in the 39th minute. He had a sharply fire home and a low shot to the bottom corner of the net. Unbelievable performances right there. And the Premier League is back.
Yeah. They just started their season most recently, and they're already hot and heavy with action.
There's some new clubs added this year, like Huddersfield has joined the fray this year. My team, Newcastle United, is back from a one-year absence. Unlike other leagues where every team is kept, if you have one of the worst records, you get relegated to another league.
That's right.
So they don't want a team that's terrible in the Premier League. And hopefully they will actually win this coming weekend. And Chelsea, of course, is fun to watch. Manchester United with Romelu Lukaku. Now into some NFL action because, as you know, we're just weeks away from the start of a new season.
Yep.
How exciting is that? A new season is coming.
Yep. If I'm not mistaken, I think the season starts either September 7th or September 10th.
Well, it starts actually the Thursday, September 8th, actually, when the New England Patriots start their defense of their Super Bowl championship at home against the Kansas City Chiefs. Right now, though, we're in the preseason phase of football. Training camp, yes, is still going on, but the preseason is taking place right now. And these are the games that these head coaches on these 32 teams look to see who will fit, who could be that missing puzzle piece that could take their team all the way to February.
Yep. And for the record, opening week of the NFL season will be September 10th.
No, yeah, that's the Sunday, but I'm talking about the very first game is on Thursday, September 8th. They always do the Thursday night game on NBC, New England at home against Kansas City. But September 10th is like the full slate of games, including the Giants will be playing Sunday night against Dallas.
Oh, as it turns out, this time it is going to open traditionally on a Sunday. They're going back to opening the season. Oh, wait a minute. I stand corrected.
Yes.
It is September 7th. Chiefs and Patriots.
Yep. Actually, it's the 8th because, it's Thursday, September 8th, and then the 9th. Actually, no, you're right. Sorry.
It is September 7th that they're going to be starting the season.
Yeah, my bad.
Patriots and
folks.
Chiefs in New England. The Patriots, in all likelihood, are going to be getting their rings that night.
And probably lowering the banner, to symbolize their 5th franchise Super Bowl. And it's going to be a fun game as always to see these two teams play each other. The Patriots, they got better in the offseason. They got an embarrassment of riches given to them. You think about the deal they made to get Dwayne Allen to go along with Gronkowski if Gronk can be 100% healthy. Making the trade with New Orleans to get Brandon Cooks to be in the receiving core. Coney Ealy on the defense right there. Signing Stephon Gilmore from the rival Buffalo Bills to be in their secondary. Yes, they did lose Logan Ryan, but they gained a very good cornerback, shutdown corner,
Right.
like Stephon Gilmore, who came to the league the year I went to the first draft I ever went to, 2012. Stephon Gilmore was drafted that year out of South Carolina. So he's really been a proven cornerback in the NFL. And, of course, you got the ageless wonder known as Tom Brady at the helm.
I don't even think ageless wonder can even begin to describe how Brady has been as a quarterback his entire career. If anything, I don't think there's no aging with this guy because he's already proven that even at the age that he's at, he's still at the top of his game.
39 he is right now. 39 years
And
old.
seeing how he has played, especially the last 3 years or so, I would not be surprised if Brady were to maybe last another 3 or 4 years in the league.
And they're coming off a year in which he was suspended. Remember, the first quarter of the season. And he comes back the first week, guns blazing, week 5 against, of all teams, Cleveland. I feel bad for the Dog Pound fans. I had to see Tom Brady resurrected that year, in that week. Oy vey comes to mind if you're Yiddish. But it was just it was an unbelievable performance on Tom Brady's part in that game. And now he gets to play a full season. That's even more scarier than the 12 games he had in 2016 with a whole new slate of players at his. Yes, they unfortunately did lose LeGarrette Blount. That's going to be that could hurt a little bit. But I'm interested to see who can replace the power that LeGarrette Blount had at running back. That's the one thing I'm looking forward in this preseason. And also Jimmy Garoppolo. These are the few opportunities that Garoppolo has to play.
Yeah.
To really, because he's in his contract year. He needs to really have an impressive showing from the second week to the final week of the preseason so that the other 32 teams going to the offseason next year or possibly the trading time this year can make an offer to try and acquire a guy like Garoppolo, because I think there is potential with him to be on a team. But at the same time, they're worried if they trade a guy like Garoppolo and if something possibly, which hasn't happened to Brady since 2008, but if there's a possibility of an injury, they don't want to look at themselves and say, how stupid were we to give up a guy like Garoppolo and let him go? So there's sort of a dilemma that goes on in that situation. But I think it will be figured out throughout the year. As for the Kansas City Chiefs, on the other hand, Patrick Mahomes really had flashes of brilliance in the first preseason game.
I mean, when you look at his numbers from his Texas Tech days, they're not terrific, but he really showed a lot of potential after he got drafted by the Chiefs in the first round. And if that name sounds familiar, it should, because his father pitched for the Mets many years ago. In fact, he was a member of the Mets pennant-winning team that lost to the Yankees in the Subway World Series.
Oh, yay, 2000. That was in 5 games. The only game we won was on that walk-off home run. Other than that, that was a crap show of epic proportions for Met fans. But for the Yankees, of course, to win their 3rd straight World Series championship. But you know what? He does come from a great athletic family, nonetheless, and he's shown flashes of brilliance on the field. He's very poised in the pocket. He's got good vision for sure. He is going to be the starter of this team. Whether Alex Smith is not in the team next year or not playing on the field this year or whatever situation, we're going to see plenty of Patrick Mahomes. What we could even see in some like Wildcat situations, let's say. And you know what? Who also is Tyreek Hill? This could be the year where he really is going to be utilized fully as a receiver, because it's freakish. He's freakishly good.
Yeah,
like he's sort of. You could put him as a receiver. You can put him as a running back. You can put him on kickoff returns. He's a utility guy, but I think this year they're going to focus more on Tyreek Hill as a receiver more than anything else.
Yeah,
and they're going to put him more into the playbook. So it's a break, and there's no Jamal Charles, so that's done in Kansas City. The Jamal Charles era. I can't wait to see what these two teams do to each other week 1. I think defensively, that's where things are going to be. That's where the game will come down to is defense, if anything. As for the Jets, they play their first game on the road at the Ralph. I'm not calling it New Era because that's a crap name. It's the Ralph to me. Always will be the Ralph.
Oh, now it's New Era Stadium?
Yeah. The New Era company bought the naming rights. I don't like the name New Era Field. It's stupid to me. I like their hats, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
Considering I think you're wearing a New Era.
Yeah, this is actually my New Era fedora is at the apartment. This is another one that I have.
I always like your fedoras, by the way. Just
thank you.
Always stylish, my man. But I hate that they did that. It's also always to me Ralph Wilson Stadium, the late Ralph Wilson, who was one of the pioneers of the AFL merging with the NFL.
Yeah.
And to me, the fact they took his name away from the stadium, I thought was just incredibly disrespectful to this guy, to what he's done for the league. And I'm a Jet fan. I'm saying this. I have enormous respect.
I understand, but at the same time, if teams want to be able to compete not only on the field but financially. They have to come up with ways to pay their bills. And
I know.
naturally, they had to strike up a deal with New Era to get the naming rights. As far as the Bills themselves, the jury's still out on Buffalo. Some people say that they're going to be a surprise. Some people say that they're going to be a disappointment. This is 17 years and counting, possibly, since their last playoff appearance.
The longest active drought going on since the Music City Miracle.
I mean, defensively, they're okay, but offensively, sorry, but you have to move on from Tyrod Taylor. The guy is not the answer to be their quarterback, and quite frankly, they just need to go someplace else.
In fact, what was crazy, Ronald Darby, the former, because they played against Philadelphia and they did lose 20-16. Ronald Darby, the ex-New England, the ex-Buffalo Bill, Buffalo Bill cornerback, was traded this past week to Philadelphia. In exchange, the Bills got Jordan Matthews.
Yeah.
And a draft pick, a 2018 third-round pick. But Jordan Matthews couldn't even play this game because of the chest injury that he's still suffering from. So, yes, they might have got some help in wide receiver wise, but the guy is still a little damaged at this moment.
And this is on the heels of the Sammy Watkins deal.
Yeah, they traded Sammy Watkins and another draft pick to the LA Rams in exchange for E.J. Gaines at cornerback to replace the loss of Stephon Gilmore in the offseason. So they are dealing with that. They're dealing with some issues on their defensive front line. Their offensive line is still a question mark, especially at the left guard position. Their quarterback situation is abysmal at best. They can't rely every play on Shady McCoy. They got to go to some other players. So this is going to be a season of trying. For Sean McDermott. It's going to be a long journey for him this year in his first season as a new head coach. But the Pagulas have faith in him, the owners of the team, and this is a team that fired their general manager, Doug Whaley, back in, I think it was during the draft. No, actually back in March.
Yeah.
So it's been a bit of a tailspin season for them. But the Eagles, who beat them, getting Ronald Darby, at their cornerback, a team that's had some issues with their secondary. But overall, I like the Alshon Jeffrey move.
Yeah.
He got 22 receptions, 23 yards. He made some good plays. Wentz is actually performing up to expectations, and he will this year.
Keep in mind, he's only in his second year. It's going to take time for him to develop.
I know. I think he's still going to have, at least they don't have a quarterback situation, the Eagles. That we know for sure. It's going to be a good season, I think, for Philadelphia. As for the Jets game playing Buffalo, they did beat Tennessee. Big whoop, 7-3.
Yeah.
And they got to play the Giants, which I'm actually going to that game with my family and my brother. So I'm going to probably need a few beers to get through that game because that's how much I feel about the New York Jets season. I'm not that optimistic, and I'm not the only Jet fan who feels that way.
Well, Jet players will convince you differently that they're not going to be a one-win team like some people are predicting them to be.
Well, the reason they will probably win more than one game, it's not their offense. I can tell you that much because they've had injury after injury in the wide receiving core. You look at Quincy Nua, broke his neck, bulging disc in his neck, done for the year. Lucky Whitehead, who was acquired off waivers from the Dallas Cowboys, just had a neck injury, 6 to 8 weeks. Or a leg injury. Yeah, he's out till November.
He broke his foot.
Yep, foot injury. That's 3 months right there. And on top, so it's Robbie Anderson and Sharon Peake.
Yeah.
Because they let Eric Decker go. Now he's a Titan.
Keep in mind, they also have Ardarius Stewart, the kid from Alabama, who they drafted in, I think, the second or third round.
And they drafted Jordan Leggett from Clemson, from the national winning champion Clemson University Tigers. Who I think they're going to develop into a future tight end superstar. Yep. I think he really, and if Austin Severing-Jenkins can return to the form that he had in his first year with Tampa Bay, that could be a solid 1-2 punch in the tight end core right there. The running back situation, though, you have a guy like Matt Forte who's entering, his age 30 season.
This is his 10th NFL season right now.
And who knows, does he have enough gas left in the tank to actually compete? And then you have, of course, our other
Bilal Powell,
who
who also is going through some aches and pains.
So it's going to be a very tough season for Jet fans to watch. I know that for sure.
You mentioned the two running backs, but if they're going to make anything out of this season, they have to take some pressure off the quarterback. How? They got to use the running game, which means if they're healthy, pound the ball to Forte and Powell as much as possible. Do not let the quarterback try and win a game for them, because that will prove to be disastrous.
But they have a good core of safeties, actually. The thing is, if you look at the safety core with Jalen from LSU, and Marcus May, that's going to be a good safety tandem. And then you look at the defensive line too, with
and you also failed to mention Jamal Adams, who was drafted number 1.
Not Jalen Mills. Jamal Adams, from LSU, the 6th overall pick. He is going to be one of the best safeties in the league for the next few years. So right there, he's a hard-hitting safety. He has great instincts. Yeah, he's going to be. I think he's going to end up being the quarterback of the defense.
He may have to.
And then you will get Muhammad Wilkerson, and you got Sheldon Richardson, and
Two
you got
guys,
Leonard Williams.
Yeah, Muhammad Wilkerson and Sheldon Richardson. 2 guys who we still don't know if they're going to have a future with the franchise after this season. I know one of those guys was on the trading block quite a bit. Both of them were on the trading block for a few months, but somehow they still managed to keep their roster spots for this coming season. But I'll tell you this, Leonard Williams has the chance to be a real star for that defense. He's the real deal.
Oh, he had the most sacks, which was 6 last year in his rookie season. Let's see what he can do year 2 for this team.
He may have to double his output for this coming season if the Jets are going to have any chance.
And the Giants, we mentioned, are playing the Cowboys week 1, Sunday night, NBC. Always fun to see one of the best rivalries in the history of the NFL playing each other on opening night. What can I say about the Cowboys except the whole issue right now, Ezekiel Elliott?
Yeah.
Oh, the situation, as we know, last July 22nd, an ex-girlfriend of his called the police and accused him of abuse that was going over a 5-day period. And what happens next? The police tried to get witnesses that allegedly saw these events took place saw the alleged incident took place over these 5 days. But they didn't corroborate with the witness, which was the ex-girlfriend. There was a lack of evidence. There was a lot of calls that were inappropriately made. Elliott said from his lawyers that inappropriate calls by the ex-girlfriend between 2:30 a.m., 10 a.m. that took place as well several times over the past week or so. And there's other things to take into account that took place on September 5th and of last year. But the NFL's policy is, even though he wasn't formally charged because there was a lack of evidence, but the fact that there's conduct out there that is detrimental to the league, he is under the guise of the personal conduct policy and therefore is suspended, was given a 6-game suspension this past week. He is appealing it. He did appeal it on Tuesday with his lawyers. The NFLPA, of course, will be involved in this appeal. I wouldn't be shocked if this goes down from a 6 to a 4 game. Why a 6-game suspension? Well, originally when it was 4 games, that was when it was due in part to the Ray Rice incident, where there was video of him beating his wife in the elevator of a hotel in Atlantic City, and when the fans and people found out he got only a 4-game suspension, there was a public outcry to the NFL. So that's when they decided to make the move from 4 to 6 games for first-time offenders under the personal conduct policy. And that's why Ezekiel is getting a 6-game suspension. His lawyers will definitely, I think, will get it down to 4. So it's going to go to
if he's that lucky.
I think he will be that lucky. They're going to have to go before an arbitrator, if anything. And if that doesn't work out, then this could go up to the next level, I think, like the appeals court. And this last year there was talk when Tom Brady had that Deflategate suspension.
Right.
There was talk of the case almost going up as high as the Supreme Court. That's how crazy that it could have been, but it didn't get to that point. Tom Brady eventually took his suspension, and he came out guns a-blazing with vengeance and ended up winning his team their second Super Bowl in 3 years. As for Zeke Elliott, he is one of the main reasons why the Cowboys won the NFC East last year, along with Dak Prescott. To lose a guy like Zeke Elliott, who had over 1,500 total yards and 15 touchdowns, that could be a huge blow for the first 4 to 6 weeks of the season, depending on what suspension he gets. Yes, they have Alfred Morris and Darren McFadden, all right? But when was the last time Run DMC was that good? It was the early days in Oakland. Alfred Morris, remember the first year he had with the Redskins? He had over. In fact, he broke the single season rushing record that they had. With RG3 back in 2012. But he's not that same Alfred Morris.
Well, let me put it this way: even though Elliott is going to be out for at least the first quarter of the season, at least the Cowboys have some type of depth that's going to help them slide by for the first 4 weeks, because even though McFadden has only been a 1,000-yard rusher twice in his career,
due to a lot of injuries, leg injuries.
Yeah, a lot of leg injuries. He at least has the luxury of getting to split time with Alfred Morris, who at one time was a 1,000-yard rusher in his own right. So look for them to maybe pound the ball with both of those guys, in addition to having Dak Prescott be the every down go-to guy as far as trying to make the big plays is concerned.
Well, when you have a receiver like Des Bryant at your beck and call, and you have Williams too, the other receiver, and Cole Beasley, he's your amazing slot receiver, sort of your Julian. He's the Julian Edelman of the team, if you will. So they do have and they have one of the best lines in the league to protect him. When you got guys like Zach Martin and Tyron Smith and Travis Frederick protecting you and making sure that no defensive player can get even within a few feet of you. So that's gonna be a challenge for that Giants pass rush to try and get through that blockade of the offensive line. But if there's a weakness, it's the right side. Ronald Leary retired this year.
Yeah.
So that could be a huge gaping hole right there in that Cowboys offensive line that the Giants, I think, are going to probably pound a lot in the opening game. And then the Giants this offseason, they poached the Jets for the second time in as many years. They took Damon Snacks Harrison from the Jets.
Yeah.
And this year they took Geno Smith, but honestly, you can keep Geno Smith. You can have him. Believe me, there's no argument from Jet fans. As for the other person you poached, Brandon Marshall, lots of credit I give to the Giants team for doing that.
Brandon's always had a productive career. I think he's caught about 1,000 yards and passes for his career. His problem is, one, he can't keep his mouth shut. Two, those off-the-field problems that he had, I have cast him in a rather unflattering light.
But there's some incidents that were not his fault. Like when he was in Miami, he literally got stabbed in the stomach by an ex-girlfriend of his.
Yeah.
Who was out of her mind, and he could have nearly died. He's had issues with mental health, and he's even admitted to it, and has been an advocate for mental health awareness. He's tried to get help. He's admitted to it, which is always the first step when you have a problem, is to admit it. He's never been afraid to admit. But there are times that he does open his mouth. He compared the Jets to the last season to a dirty diaper.
Well, when you think about it, didn't the Jets season go into the crapper anyway?
Yeah.
After winning 5 games?
Even though it was in the crapper, but as a player, do you really, say if you're a Jet player, right, and you hear your teammate like Brandon Marshall make a comment like that, do you really want to hear a teammate make those kind of public statements? No, that's just not right. It's wrong. There's sort of an unwritten rule. You don't talk badly about your team in public if you're on the team. Or if you're not even on the team, but you know what? Sometimes people don't give a crap about the unwritten rule.
Yep.
Anyway, this Giants offense, the one thing that has always held them together, of course, is 2 words: Eli Manning.
And the Giant fans better really hope that Eli Manning takes every snap from center this season, because their backup plans, for lack of a better word, leave a whole lot to be desired.
Josh Johnson.
Josh Johnson and Geno Smith.
Davis Webb.
And Davis Webb. Some say that maybe Davis Webb is going to be the quarterback of the future once Eli retires.
No.
First off, Eli's not going anywhere anytime soon. I think he has another at least 3 good years left in him.
He's got plenty. I think if we can see a guy like Tom Brady go for some more years, I think Eli can go some more years too as well. He's got great strength. The problem is that offensive line has got to do a good job, especially on the left side. You know what? If you're going up against a guy like Sean Lee, he's going to try to expose that left side line heavily in that game. So you're going to see plenty of quick passes, some slant throws. And ODB, he better mature this year. You know, especially if you have a playoff game, don't be a moron going on a boat in Miami with your shirt off thinking you're so cool.
Yeah.
You should be at the field, at Quest Diagnostics. I think that's the name of the practice facility. And he should be watching tape nonstop about your opposing team, doing your homework, and preparing yourself, not being a showy, flashy moron who thinks he's cute with Justin Bieber being on a boat. That's just moronic.
I know it was his off day and he could have done whatever the hell he wanted, but
No.
Real champions never take days off.
Not during when you have to play a team like Green Bay. Yes, I know historically going to that game, the Giants have owned Green Bay in the playoffs. But that doesn't mean they're going to always win. And look what happened.
Yeah.
The Packers won. They ended up, unfortunately, losing to Dallas the following week. Actually, no, they beat Dallas the following week.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. They beat Dallas the following week on that Jared Cook throw. You know where Jared Cook is now? An Oakland Raider.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? But it's going to be interesting. And the rest of it's going to be fun to see the football come back. So many compelling storylines. Like, what new coach are you looking forward to see this coming season?
I'm curious to know what Doug Marrone is going to be doing in Jacksonville, because he's got a bit of a quarterback controversy all of a sudden. He inherited Blake Bortles, who's been a major disappointment.
And including the game recently against Tampa Bay. He underthrew so many passes. It was unbelievable.
He underthrew so many passes that he had to be pulled from the game, and they had to go to Chad Henne. Now it's gotten to the point where he has to decide between Chad Henne and Blake Bortles to be the everyday quarterback this coming season. It's a good thing that the Jaguars have Leonard Fournette out of LSU to hand the ball off to. That way he can take some pressure off of the quarterback, whoever it's going to be, because at this rate, I'm not really sure that either of these guys can be the difference for the Jags this year.
And Keelan Cole had a touchdown. And unfortunately, the guy drops it at the goal line.
Wow.
Other than that, Henne had a better performance than Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles, a career 55% completion rate. He has more turnovers than touchdowns since he came into the league in 2014, and yet they picked up his fifth-year option. So, yeah, Doug Marrone's got a hell of a decision to make going into the opening week if he wants to make Bortles the opening day starter.
Yeah.
But this is they got a new sheriff in town with their head coach and Tom Coughlin in the front office. And these are no-nonsense, no BS type of guys that they will do something if Bortles doesn't prove that he can be the starter. The other coach I'm actually looking forward to is Sean McVay with the Rams.
Yeah.
I really, the fact he's got the second year of Jared Goff, you just acquired Robert Woods and Sammy Watkins in that trade. They have a whole array of receivers. The defense is electric, especially with Aaron Donald in that front seven. I'm looking forward to Rams football this year. What I'm not looking forward to is a soccer stadium masquerading as a football field.
As if that franchise could not go any more backwards than they already have. They've gone from 65 to 70,000 seat Qualcomm Stadium in San Diego, which had some really good football fans, to having to play at the Home Depot Center.
And on top of that, the rookie receiver, their running back, just tore his ACL, done for the year. Their receiver from Clemson, Mike Williams, herniated disc. He may not even be available till October. And there's so many. And here's the other storylines: quarterback injuries throughout the league. Cam Newton, will he be ready for Week 1 with that the offseason shoulder issues? The same thing with Andrew Luck. Will he even be able to play Week 1? Because who knows? And then you look at the insurance. Yeah, you look at Joe Flacco with his back issues.
Yeah.
Will he be ready to play Week 1? So there are several quarterback issues that are going to be taken into account going into the 2017 season. I cannot wait to see Christian McCaffrey, though, one of my other favorite rookies for the Carolina Panthers.
Yeah. He really has a chance to be a major star for the Panthers this year and years to follow. Now, how is Cam Newton going to be able to respond after such a disappointing season last year?
Well, as I mentioned, they got him. They brought in Matt Khalil. They gave him a $50+ million contract when he had some terrible years with the Minnesota Vikings, especially the injury he had in his last season with Minnesota in 2016. So to give a guy who is still, to me, unproven, that type of contract says that they are either they're confident in him or they're out of their minds. We'll see which is the answer going to the season. As for the Miami Dolphins, Jay Cutler, of all players, on a 1-year, $10 million deal, when honestly you should be in the booth talking about the game. I like you as a person, Jay. I have nothing against you personally. As a quarterback, you are rotten eggs. But he did thank his trainer, his doctor, who helped him in the offseason, Dr. Mark Bowen, who fixed his right shoulder, the very reason why his season ended with the Bears in December.
I think he's going to be needing more than just his shoulder fixed. I think he's going to need his brain fixed as well.
He made a decision. He thought he can have another go around. And not only that, this is all due in part to Ryan Tannehill having to need surgery and basically he being shut out for this 2017 season. I feel bad in a sense for Tannehill now because he needed this year to prove to the Miami franchise that he is their quarterback. Now he'll be relegated probably as a backup on most teams, or probably be given those prove-it 1-year, 2-year prove-it deals. I don't think he's going to be anybody's franchise quarterback for some time until he can actually prove he can
He's
stay.
never been a true franchise quarterback, to be honest with you.
But when you have to deal with, again, when quarterbacks have so many offensive coordinators coming into their camp, into their organization, they have to learn from one playbook to the next. And it's not just quarterbacks, it's players in general. That hurts. I've always talked about this. Consistency always hurts.
Yeah.
At the end, I know it sounds like an excuse, but is a legitimate reason.
Yep.
When you have to learn from one playbook to another, that screws with your head right there because you're so used to this one playbook, then all of a sudden you have to learn a new playbook. Imagine going from a West Coast offense to just a Wildcat offense.
Yep. Well, with about a minute left, before we sign off, we just wanted to send a special order of congratulations to an iconic New Yorker, Derek Jeter. Not only did he become a father for the first time, as his wife gave birth to a baby girl recently, he is now a major league owner. Or it's just a matter of time before he becomes a major league owner because he bought a percentage of the Florida Marlins. And the plan is he's going to be the Marlins' new boss of baseball operations.
I could not be happier for the guy, and now that you got Don Mattingly as your manager, you have Giancarlo Stanton, who's tearing the league with 42 homers,
and is also the subject of trade rumors too.
I hope that's not the case because believe me, Giancarlo, that's the type of guy you build your franchise around.
So, for everyone here, I'm Jamie,
and I'm Eric.
We'll see you next Monday night. Good night.
Peace.